Hello, hello, testing 1, 2, 3. It's kind of noisy. Well, hello, thank you for joining me again today. My name is Dan, and I started this painting last night, and it has been the occasion of considerable experimentation for me here today. Hey, I just hit 4,500 followers on my Facebook page. Just a nice round number. I wish it was 45,000. Oh, never mind that statement. And it looks like some people are watching, so that must mean I can bring up my monitor. Very good. Hello. So let's get official. Look at this is Daily Art. Speaking of round numbers, this is Daily Art Adventure number 888. 888. Oils and masking, question mark. I have here some oil sticks in my hand. These happen to be the artist's paint stick made by Shiva. I also have some R&F paint sticks, not to be confused with oil pastels. These are, and if they haven't been used in a while, they develop a skin over them that helps prevent them from drying. The skin, they skin over is part of the technology, if you will. I have yellow ochre in this hand and orange in this hand. All right, now this looks, what I'm doing right now looks terribly bold, brave. It's not really quite as risky. It's not really actually nearly as risky as it looks. Let me explain that. In a few minutes, I'm going to glaze the entire painting with liquid. That label is dirty. Let's see if I got another liquid bottle. Here we go. Here's liquid original. Okay, it's a little bit smelly. That's for that reason I have opened a couple windows around me here in my studio. So why this is not quite as brave as it looks, because so now I've got orange and red. Let's switch out the orange for blue. So when I do that glaze, when I do the liquid glaze, each of these lines will turn into a faint mist of color if I rub it. Now, if I don't rub it too much, we will still be able to see just a bit of the line, a ghost of the line. Does that make sense? So anyway, what it looks like right now, I'm being, well, it looks like I'm ruining the painting actually, but it looks like I'm being very bold and brave, but turns out not quite as brave as it looks. Now, let me see if I want any other color. Yeah, a little bit of green. So these sticks are just another trick for introducing purely abstract stuff into my painting. All right, now. And if you welcome to Thinker 888 and Barbara and Zoran and Meticularius and Inomida. Yes, yesterday Splatter. Today, that's cute. Thank you. It's cute. This painting is in fact quite the experiment, and I'm quite happy with it so far. in the acrylic stage, everything on here is acrylic except for this oil sticks, and I'm about to switch over, then everything will be oil. In the acrylic stage, I used packaging tape, this stuff right here, to cover up different parts of the canvas at different stages. I did that three separate times. Now that I'm in oil, I'm not sure that I can do any more. Hang on, I just realized I don't have some color on my palette that I really need. Now that I'm in oil, I'm not really sure that I can do any masking at all. I'm going to play with it. That's the experiment word there on my title. I'm going to start out with some ultramarine and some phthalo. So phthalo and ultramarine. I'm going to wipe quite a bit of that off, by the way, before I'm done. So again, I'm not, what I'm doing right this moment looks extremely bold. It is not quite so bold as it looks. It is vigorous because I'm in a hurry. I have not got all day. Yes, some violet or purple, if you will. Now, I'm clearly not doing any masking yet. For one thing, I want the entire painting to be an oil painting, quote unquote. When I'm all done, I want it to be an oil painting. So I want all of the entire canvas, I want the entire painting to have at least some oil paint on it, okay? So that just sort of by way of honesty or something, when I label it as an oil painting, the whole thing will have oil on it. There won't be any acrylic bits still peeking through. But the real reason I'm glazing the whole thing, of course, is because I want the effect. You know, I want the color that I don't know how well you can see. There's all those oil stick marks that I briskly applied a few minutes ago. I can still see almost all of them, but if I want some of them to disappear, I will just, you know, rub them for another little bit, and they will completely disappear. In most cases, though, I find that I actually like the little vestiges. Oh, I forgot. Hang on. I've got to dump out my bucket of water in the kitchen here and switch over to my bucket of Gamsol. Unlike Mark Carter, one of my heroes, he doesn't ever rinse his brushes. I don't know how he does. I mean, I've watched him, but I just that's a trick I don't know that I can learn. I mean, I paint in such a different manner than him. All right, so I'm just giving these real cheap chip brushes a real quick wash, clean, not thorough by any means. All right, and now more liquid And I'm going to switch to warm colors, oxide red, which of course, oxide red is a brown, right? A little bit of, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, a little bit of Indian yellow, and then a tiny bit of Scarlet Lake. Again, don't credit me with too much bravery. What I'm doing right now is really not that risky or whatever, because I'm going to pick up a rag in a few minutes. Wonderful, thank you. And I'm going to now negative paint, that is to say, paint by removing paint, right? And then, of course, if I want to apply more glazes, again, I will indeed. I do that more than half the time. Some of you are saying, well, if you're going to take it all off, why'd you put it on in the first place? Of course, that's because I'm not taking it all off. And if I were to give a more smart aleck answer to that question would be, whoever says that, you've never done any real good furniture refinishing, have you? I don't mean cheap brush on varnish or brush on stain, but real wood finishing anyway. That's what kind of is a correlation of what I'm doing here. Put it on, then take it off. All right, so that's okay. Some smaller brushes now. It's a little too yellow, cool yellow for my taste. So I'm gonna do some Scarlet Lake. Let's just try some pure Scarlet Lake here. I'm gonna add some orange. I don't even know which orange it is. I don't put any cadmiums out, so it's not a cadmium. I know that. Oh, that's pretty. There we go. That's a nice color right there. It's a little bit too much of a nice color right there. Too much Indian yellow. So I hope this approach to painting looks like fun to you. If you're paying any attention, I don't know how this could not look like fun. It's one of the few areas in painting where you can be a absolute control freak, because I'm controlling the color to the nth degree. I'm controlling it to an extreme degree, and yet I'm not suffering the normal concomitant downsides of being a control freak, right? Usually when you're a control freak painter, it looks like it. But here, I'm able to just tweak the color to an exquisite degree without the downsides of that exquisiteness, without the downsides of that that usually go along with being so much in control. Little permanent rose right there. That's nice. Yeah. And a little bit more dioxazine violet. There are some colors that to me just seem, all colors can be made transparent, just by adding enough medium to them, but there's some that just go, they're just lovely in their transparent mode. And predictably, they're the transparent colors. Indian yellow, permanent rose, dioxazine violet, which is what I'm doing right now. This middle area right in here is a little too green for me, so I'm doing a little bit of purple on top of that. Bear with me just a minute. How about some manganese violet? I don't use that very often. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, it's a little bit more of an opaque color, isn't it? Huh. I buy colors every once in a while just to experiment. Let's clean off this brush. A lot of family sounds going on around here. Yeah, no, manganese violet, not as pretty as the dioxazine in the transparent state. So I'll probably. Okay. Yes, it's irritating me to paint with one hand. It really is. But at the moment, I don't want to bother dirtying two brushes. So again, I'm anti-greening up here with actually an ultramarine violet at the moment. add a little bit of phthalo blue. Killing a little bit of color up here. It's too yellow, too bright, so I've just added some violet to that as well. Back to phthalo blue in here. I don't like that I just lost this lovely little bit of light right here. So I'm going to lift that out again. All right, now that I look at my glaze here, you know, I'm not sure that it's sticky enough. Let me just experiment here a little bit, just pulling off a piece of what we all call saran wrap. I know it's a brand name, but you know what I mean. Will that even stick? Well, then when I pull it off, will it leave a mark? No discernible mark. That's good. Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, I like the painting quite well. I like what my masking experiments, I did the tape in the acrylic phase. I masked 3 separate times, different, larger areas each time. And pardon me while I just look and think for a minute. Okay, I'm not going to mask right now. Okay, all right. My old method for many years, several years, when I got to this point, everything is glazed. At this point, I would either, I'm going to lift out a little bit of light while I'm talking. At this point, I would either draw with pencils and then draw with paint, or vice versa. Draw with paint, then draw with pencils. Okay, so that was kind of standard operating procedure. And then over the years, the last 3 or 4 years, my fuzz layer gained in importance. And forgive me while I'm just standing here thinking. Yeah, I think I'm going to do the fuzz layer next, and then draw with either pencils or paint, and then typically the other. Okay, so then now the next question is, no, I won't do any masking. I may not do any masking in the oil stage. The question is, can I keep my paws off? Can I keep my hands off the parts of the painting that are beautifully abstract right now, beautiful in their beautiful abstraction right now? Like this area, all the light areas, as a matter of fact. Anyway, let me just proceed and say welcome again to Rusty, Kathleen, Gwen, and Cynthia. The oil is wet, yes, of course. And over on on YouTube. I have Thinker, Barbara, Zoran, Meticularius, Ino. Have I ever used paint sticks to your initial drawing? To do my, yes, I have. In fact, I have a video to that effect, Thinker, if you Google paint stick underneath the oil painting. This Barbara is 36 by 60. Zoran, I hope I've answered your question right. It was an acrylic painting, now it's an oil painting. From now on, it's oil. So I start out on acrylics, finish. Yes, beat the devil out of it. That's exactly right. Right, hey, right. I'm assuming you got my. Email with your updated portrait, correct? All right, let's do. The fuzz layer. I'm gonna use. That's a number 8 filbert, and I want to use a fan brush. I'm trying to decide which one. Yeah, I guess the largest of those 3. All right, for you newcomers, the fuzz layer is translucent color, like the word fuzz may imply for you. I hope it does. Opaque color applied extremely thinly. So I've just said the same thing twice, right? Translucent is opaque, applied very thinly. Very, very, very soft edges, like fuzzy. The word fuzz would apply. And local color or realistic color. Right, so I have just mixed up some very warm yellow or yellow-orange on my brushes. And I'm dancing here. I still don't know what color my sky is going to end up being. I think it's going to be mostly a blue sky, believe it or not. Not a fiery sunset, or in this case sunrise, like it is right now. That's just underpainting color. I believe when all is done, it's going to be a mostly blue sky. He says as he puts more orange into his sky. Okay, let me repeat my description because some of you, again, newcomers. Okay, so my fuzz layer is extremely, like, let's say for instance, right now I'm going to paint this face of this building, right, that one wall. You with me? And I'm going to paint it again, warm yellow orange, translucent, not transparent, not opaque, right in between. All right. That's what I mean by soft edges. My brush, I happen to notice at one moment this brush went a good 5 inches away from the boundary. Okay? That's what I mean by soft edges. Let's do same color down here in the back of this car. So I'm going to paint the back of the car. You with me? That's what I mean by a soft edge. Okay, I hope if some of you, if you're paying attention, I'm freaking you out. If you're not paying any attention, you're just going, oh yeah, that's what I was going to do. Okay, but I don't believe you if that's what you're saying, because I know that's not how early journey painters typically paint. And again, I would not use the term loose or loose brush strokes or loose painting. I used to use that term, but I don't anymore. Now I call it energetic stroke. Not the issue is not looseness. In fact, I want, as you can tell, I hope you can tell by my drawing here, that my drawing is quite tight. Tight, tight, tight. In other words, accurate. Energetic stroke is a much better term than, and what you're seeing is high energy. Now, let me explain that the painting's not done. Did you know that after this, at the end of this layer, at the end of this stage, this phase? By the way, this is layer number 11. I did count up earlier during the break. Okay, so this is layer number 11. I think I'm just about done doing this crazy loose warm stuff. Let me clean these two brushes. I think I'll just keep using them. And now I want to mix up some, bear with me, I've run out of room on my palette. I'm going to mix up some cool bluish, purplish. I'm not sure what color blue, but I'm going to mix up some, again, translucent. That means it has white in it, right? It has some opacity to it. But it'll be applied in a very thin manner. Let's start over at the warm end of the blue spectrum, which means phthalo blue, a greenish blue. Oh boy, some of you, especially you, I just started broadcasting on Facebook after a 3-year hiatus. I started on Facebook 3 years ago, but I just came back to Facebook just a couple weeks ago, so I'm picking up new listeners. Let me just explain that this is Daily Art Adventure number 888. Literally, that means more than that many, more than 1,000 broadcasts. So some of my regulars, we have long history, and I've given these lectures, so to speak, over and over and over again. Here's one lecture, for instance, is which blue is warm and which blue is cool. Because you can have a middle and blue, just imagine such a thing. But then if you add yellow to it, has it gotten warmer or cooler? If you add red to it, has it got warmer or cooler? So there is considerable confusion among artists about which is which. Oh boy, I don't have the energy to do the whole thing right now, so I will. It comes up often. Let me just say that in my strong opinion, yellow-orange, orange-yellow, yellow-orange is the warmest of warms. If you make that your true north and you come south and you find out that, in fact, a purplish blue is slightly cooler, a greenish blue is slightly warmer. So in my world, it's the greenish blue. Phthalo blue is a warm blue, and ultramarine blue is a cool blue. And if you disagree with that, that's all right, but that's just because you haven't heard my lecture. So we'll let you be wrong until you hear the whole story. But there's that. Okay, let's get back to painting. Now I've got a combination of blues on my brushes. Ooh, that's nice. He says, hey, I've got an idea. I know what. Instead of masking, how about at the end of this fuzz phase, at the end of the fuzz phase, how about if I simply lift off with a rag? How about if I lift off anything so that I can expose what's underneath? That'd be a good compromise, wouldn't it? One of the purposes of the fuzz layer is to color balance the whole painting quickly, because as you can see, I can cover very large areas of the canvas very quickly. So it's a good way to get the exact color, well, not the exact, close to the exact color that I want on any given area of section of the painting. With the exception of my lightest lights aren't light enough yet. All right. Yeah, I'm going to at least think about here. Are there any areas that I would like to re-expose, if you will, some of my abstract underpainting? And here's my first answer is yes, right there. Yes, over there. Yes, down here. This what I'm looking at right now is, again, not realism. I'm looking for areas that I would like to see, especially some of the abstract stuff that was underneath before I did that fuzz. Oh, I've got some more fuzz to do. Hang on. I need to do, speaking of local color, which is what artists call realistic color. Yes, Cynthia, this is oil. Yes, yes. Hello, Donna Savage. Nice to have you on board. And Moraid, happy Easter weekend to you, indeed. Oh, Jackson. Oh, do you want me to deliver your painting today, I bet? I could probably do that. Your mom's painting in particular. It's not varnished yet, but I can deliver it with tacky varnish on it, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense? That wouldn't hurt. That wouldn't hurt anybody if it was a little tacky with varnish. And it's not dripping wet. It would just be a little bit tacky. All right, I need some. Now it's some spring green. Yeah. Again, do you see how quickly large areas I can colorize, so to speak, using this fuzz technique. Large brushes, large areas of color, soft, no definition at all. All very, very, very soft edges. All right, now the next task is drawing. This next layer of drawing, and I think I'm going to do pencils next. What typically I either do pencils next, very unconventional, you understand, to use pencils at this stage. I mean, a very, very traditional is to use charcoal underneath an oil painting, but that is not at all. When those artists, traditional painters who use charcoal, those charcoal lines were not expected or designed or intended to be at all visible in the finished work of art, right? Right. Whereas the pencil lines I'm putting down are very much intended to be a part of the final artwork. And what often helps me decide, am I going to draw with fine brushes? What I mean, let me show what I mean. Like brushes maybe about this size, number twos. That's what I mean by fine brushes. What often is the determining factor is how much pencil, because I did pencil already twice in the acrylic layer, how much pencil is currently visible. The answer is very, very little. So I feel comfortable, if you will. Now, again, for the benefit of anybody, any newbies, any new followers here, new viewers, especially on YouTube, the purpose of the pencil is twofold. As you would expect, the pencils are liney tools, linear tools, so they're a great aid in drawing and capturing accuracy, realism, similitude. All right, correct? Because that's what you would expect. And I do, in fact, I am using them for that purpose. However, that is very much the secondary purpose. The primary focus, intention, reason for using the pencils, secondary is drawing, accuracy of rendering. Primary is simply texture. I just like the way it looks. I actually started using pencils about 4 years ago, I think. I think it was the summer of 2016, and I'd have to go back and look, but I started, that was the summer I did a couple hundred abstract paintings, which I enjoyed, still enjoy. I look forward to my next abstract blitz, if you will. But while I was doing abstracts, of course, I felt more free to pull out whatever tricks I wanted to, right? Because I wasn't focused on realism, similitude, capturing a realistic image, so I could just play around. And so I grabbed these pencils, and I liked the effect so much in my abstract painting that I said, hey, why not carry those over into my representational paint? So that's exactly what I did. And then, I've told this story so many times, then when I saw a couple other artists in galleries, I saw a couple other artists who also incorporated pencils. I don't know what kind of pencils they were, but it looked like they could have been something like this. It didn't look like graphite, you know, it's blacker than graphite. And in both of those cases, the artists had in the rack or on the shelf or on the wall some artwork that some of their paintings used pencils and some did not. And in both cases, I liked the work that included pencils better than the ones that didn't. So that was a great study, a great encouragement to me. So it made me think, okay, it's not just me. When I see other people's work with or without pencil, I like it better with. So that pretty much cinched it for me, that what started out as an experiment ended up being a permanent feature, characteristic of my painting technique. Now, when I finished this phase, the pencil phase right here, the painting is almost certainly going to have too much pencil in it. But not to worry, because the painting's not done. Just as it wasn't done at the end of the fuzz layer, so it's not going to be done it's not done until it's done, in other words. And that's the point at which I balance everything out. Not now. My job right now is not to be careful or cautious and, you know, don't use too much pencil, don't you? No, no, no. My job is to do as much pencil as I want to make it look good. By the way, just for fun, this is layer or phase number 12, okay, in this painting. And how many to go? Let me just count. Drawing with brushes, 11, then final edit, then broken color, then sparkle. I'd like to get all that done today. And then tomorrow, glaze, dark details, light details. So 7 or 8 more layers after this one. So what did I say? This is layer 12, so it's 19. So when I'm finished, the painting will be 19 or 20 different distinct phases or stages of painting. Okay, just for what it's worth. That's what I said at the beginning, but I wasn't sure. It was just a wild stab in the dark, and now it's pretty confirmed. Yeah, it'll probably be either 19 or 20 steps before the painting is finished, and that's pretty typical in this season. My painting technique has become more complex as the years have gone on. I rarely drop anything, but I do occasionally add, pick up, and create new layers. New stages. I don't drop the old ones typically. At least I haven't yet that I can think of. So this is about number 12 out of 20, let's say. I hope that it's obvious by the way that I'm holding, the way that I'm drawing. It should be obvious to you that my number one objective, goal, focus with the pencils is not accurate, or better term would be precise drawing. It's actually quite accurate, but it's not precise. I'm not sure that makes sense, but like all these little balconies, you know, I've got the right number in each row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and there's actually supposed to be 12, so that's plenty close enough for a painting. Do you follow me? I think, and I didn't realize this when I first started doing the pencil stuff, I think it was 4 years ago. I didn't realize what was happening, but I think the pencil phase is what I rely on to give my paintings sufficient enough hard edges. You know, at the end of this phase, there'll be too many hard edges, but don't worry. Why? Because I have 8 more layers to go, right? So, but the presence of the pencil work is one of the, when I look at my old paintings, like from 5, 6, 7, 8, 15 years ago, whatever. Every once in a while, I like one of my old paintings quite a bit. It's like, wow, that's a pretty good painting for back then. Because by and large, I consider myself, without question, I'm a better painter than I was 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago. And one of the chief characteristics, one of the specific things that I pick up on is the presence of the pencil. And the pencil work gives my paintings, my favorite word would be grit. It gives my paintings a certain grittiness that I find I miss when they're not there. I noticed several years ago when I was looking at, say, Richard Schmid paintings. I love Richard Schmid's work. And I would look at his painting and go, man, his paintings have a grittiness to them, a sparkle edge. And I'm using sparkle there not in reference to points of light, but just a crystalline edginess to them. And yet they also have a lot of soft. So, but, and he achieves his, partly I came to find out, after I bought his book, that he uses paint straight out of the tube. He doesn't use any medium. And as you may know, I use tons of medium. Most of my paint is transparent. Everything on this canvas right now is layers of transparent acrylic or white acrylic with transparent on top of it. And then the fuzz layer, which is translucent, which is even more sophisticated, if you will, than the transparent layer. So the look of my paintings is entirely predicated upon this, can I say, excessive use of or excessive reliance upon transparent color. All right? So that means I'm using lots of medium, contrary to Richard Schmid, whose work I absolutely hate because he's so much better than I am. But part of the way he achieves that grittiness, that grit edge, hard edge, and again, it's not too much hardness, but there's enough of it, and I do not have that in my paintings, and that's part of the reason. Part of the reason is because almost all of my paints are cut, if you will, with, in fact, large amounts of medium, right? Hey, Izzy, are you listening? Yeah. Good. You learning anything? Yeah. Good. So the pencils have taken the place, so to speak, have created, it has ended up being the tool that gives me the sparkle that I'm, not the sparkle, the grit that I'm looking for. Okay, that's enough careful drawing there. And just in case you're wondering, yes, indeed, you absolutely can paint or draw faster with two hands than you can with one. So there's another reason for why I think everybody should paint with two hands. I consider this particular phase of the painting process, that is the pencil after the glaze, after the fuzz layer, to be one of the most, as far as capturing the image accurately, I consider this phase, this stage, this layer of the painting to be possibly the most important. It is at this stage right here that I want to know. I can still change my mind a little bit after this layer, but after that it becomes problematic to change my mind. So this is where I try to make any corrections that need to be made. And you'll see this if you stick with me, especially when I get down here, because at the moment, other than this car, all these cars are extremely abstract. Likewise, pedestrians, all this is very abstract. And I'm going to actually sit down on a chair and sort of get deep into the drawing side of my brain. and make sure that I've got, now that doesn't equal detail. You know, accuracy does not equal detail, but it means whatever lines are there, I can really put my weight down on them. They are, I believe they're accurate, okay? Those, of course, are right there, are just purely abstract marks. So I've finished this at the top of the painting, so from here up and from here up. Over here, I just can use obviously the pencils are very convenient for indicating branches and trees, bare branches. I've already done some of that in earlier layers and with brushes. But so that's good enough. Now, I fear I'm standing right in your way, am I? Hello, Beth Smith. Nice to hear from you. Thank you, Zoran. I appreciate that. Hello, Monique. Welcome from the Netherlands. It's late over there, isn't it? And Pink Haze Pie. Call one live. Good for you. I'm going to move you slightly so that I can move over here without blocking your vision, I think. That doesn't require any drawing down there. It's drawn well enough as is. So I certainly don't obligate myself to, you know, draw everything. If it doesn't need drawing, don't draw it. But if it needs correction, correct it. All right, I think it's time for me to sit down. To which my feet say, yay. Whew. Oh, that feels better. Now, again, I want accurate drawing. Back to my recent mantra, why I don't like the term loose painting anymore. Used it my whole life, same as everybody else. About 6 or 8 months ago, I went, wait a minute. That term is completely misleading to early journey painters, because when you say paint loose, it sounds like, to the beginner, it sounds like paint inaccurate, and that is a misnomer in my opinion. All right, so there's the symphony auditorium, so to speak, at the end of the street. Now, let's draw a car in here. And as I said, I used to just keep my cars, because frankly, I don't care about cars. Unlike when I was in junior high school. That's what we used to call middle school for you youngsters. When I was in junior high, I cared about cars. But that's been a long time now, and I don't. So I didn't care much about them when I was in my paintings either. But then I discovered that, nah, that was weakness in my painting. My paintings would look better if I took the time to get the cars accurate. So accurate, but energetic strokes. So that's the term that I use. Instead of loose painting, I advocate, and here's a, I'm going to put a kid on a man on a bicycle right here. See, I haven't even started to render him. But people on bike, and this, I have a pedestrian here, but he or she is evidently the victim of gigantism. She's about 8.5 feet tall, so we'll make that change and cut a couple feet off that pedestrian there. And that won't matter a bit. The fact that it was erroneous early on won't matter a bit. There's a railing, hand railing. I'm standing, when I took this picture, I'm actually standing up on a little rise, a little hill, with the Capitol building at my back. So I'm on a grassy knoll, about like this street. My feet are about 5 feet, maybe 6 feet higher than this street right here. Then this road goes down a little dip and then comes back up. So quite a trick, actually, trying to capture that perspective, and it's quite subtle. So one of my children was actually quite instrumental in my conversion to realistic cars. My youngest son, Cameron, who does like cars, he's not in middle school anymore. He's married and has a kid, but he's the one person in our family who really likes cars, and he does quite well with cars. He started in high school buying them, and buy low, sell high. So he worked his all the way up to at least one of his dream cars. He sold it now. He has quite a bit of sense, but before their baby was born, for the last year or so, he was driving a Corvette Stingray around because that's what he wanted to drive. So he had his fun. Then when the baby came, he sold it and bought a Subaru or a Honda or something. I don't know. See, I don't care. I don't care. But anyway, he used to tease me mercilessly, I might add, about my cars. And so he shamed me into... Did you know that, Izzy? No. Cameron used to tease me about my cars and my paintings. Dad, what is that, a Russian car? And he would say the name of it. Evidently, there's a make of Russian cars that are, as you might imagine, ugly as can be. Yeah. He would say, Dad, what is that? Is that whatever a Russian car was? So, turns out if you're going to do cityscapes, you have to do cars. Who'd have thunk it? And if you're going to do cars, you have to do them well. See, that's part of this mindset, my change from loose. No, loose painting is not the right terminology at all. And I mentioned, in fact, this morning, so forgive me if you were with me then. I'm repeating myself, but that's all right. Nothing, I repeat myself constantly, so get used to it if you watch me at all. For a good 8 or 10 years now, one of my stated objectives, not just like, something I've thought about. No, I've said this publicly, repeatedly, both on my broadcasts and elsewhere, that my objective has been that I want my paintings both more accurate and more messy, both. more accurate, and more messy. Okay, so that's grown into 3 pedestrians there. We started out with 1, a couple pedestrians walking over here. And a street light here that I kind of like. I've described before, I'll describe again, a city street like this with a sidewalk. Along the sidewalk is a veritable forest of vertical marks, just literally hundreds. There's trees, street lights, traffic lights, and signs, and more signs. You know, pedestrian crossing, no parking, yes parking, parking meters, the parking meter, you know, just all kinds of stuff. So just imagine take a comb, you know, and running your fingers. That's one way to. If you understand that about a city street, that will help you. I'm not obviously, as you can tell, I'm not even going to begin to try to render I just make a whole bunch of vertical marks, and of course in the final edit layer I decide which marks I want to keep and which I want to get rid of. But it's easier to get rid of things than it is to invent them. In the final edit layer, which is what I call coming up pretty soon, but in a couple layers. It is just like it sounds. It's an edit. It's a final edit. And that's when I finally paint, in a sense, like a traditional oil painter. That's when I paint in opaque colors. And at that point, I decide what bits to keep and what bits to cover up. And I don't, at that stage in the final edit, I don't want to have to add much. I don't want to come to some part of the painting and go, ooh, there's not enough stuff here. Does that make sense? So that's why I spend pretty much all the underpainting stages creating all kinds of interesting stuff. The beauty in my paintings, in fact, I think this is the beauty of any painting, is not in the accurate rendering of what's in the picture. The beauty is that, even though that's important, the real beauty in the painting is all the surprises, all the abstract marks that one would not expect to see in a highly representational, accurate painting, right? And so that is what I'm after. All right, I'm done with pencils. I'm sitting back and thinking. I don't usually do this. I don't usually introduce more abstract swooshes, but for some reason, I just want red in particular for some reason. That might be enough. Hello, Debbie Moss. Nice to have you watching. Okay, next stage, next phase is detailed drawing with small brushes and dark transparent color. The rule is, my rule is, you always get dark with transparent and light with opaque. So for me to say dark transparent colors is actually a redundancy. If it's dark, it's transparent. If it's transparent, it's dark. So I don't really need to say. But for those of you who are not acquainted with my world, I will be redundant and say dark transparent colors. Let me pick a couple brushes. Right, there's one I don't use very often. I think I'll start down here at the bottom. got myself in a mood. No, I don't want to start at the top and do the same thing that I did last time. I want to start at the bottom this time. All right, so again, anybody who either cares or anybody who wants to pursue this crazy way of painting, I can bring you a little bit closer here. The purpose of this dark layer, hang on just a second, I need to, one of you guys, the right camera needs to move a little bit to the left. Hang on, I have two cameras here. Okay, I really do want them painting the same direction. I have two cameras, two phones controlling the two cameras, and two monitors. Monitoring the feed. All right, so dark details. One of the objectives of this stage, this phase of the painting process, is to make sure that I have adequate darks in the painting. Generally speaking, all things being equal, and of course many times things are not equal, but all things being equal, our eyes would rather see yes than less, is the way I now like to put it. Our eyes would rather see more, not less. So that old adage, that old saying, less is more, is not technically true, it's ironically true. It's true because of its irony, but it's not literally true. I don't know that I need to explain it that much, but please don't be confused. Less is not more, less is less. More is more, that's why we call it more. And I understand what is meant by the irony, but I'm afraid that too often people blindly spout off that silly expression and it damages their painting. There are times when the ironic is true. There are times when less is more. But you better know. Anyway, generally speaking, our eyes would rather see more, not less. Generally speaking, our eyes would rather see. And so why did it come up right now? Because generally speaking, our eyes would rather see a full range of values, not a limited range of values, okay? So one of my goals or objectives at this stage is to, I just did some serious redrawing on that car because there were some serious inaccuracies. This late in the game, can you believe it? There was still some corrections that needed to be made. I had the back wheel well too far back. So with this layer, one of my objectives is to make sure that I have sufficient darknesses, if I can use that funny terminology. I want to make sure I have enough darks, because theoretically, at least, at the end of this phase, all my darks are in place, and the painting goes pretty much straight to lightness from here. In other words, my overall canvas, right at the way it is right now, is a little bit dark. So let me bring you guys down a little bit so you can see a little bit better. All right, so my painting is a little too dark to my taste, but not to worry, not to panic, because I still have, what layer is this? This is layer 13, right? And most of the finishing layers have a lightening effect on the painting. This is my last darkening layer. Can I move this over? You guys still? Yeah. Okay, good. So during the pencil stage, I talked about how that in the pencil stage, I was creating too many liney marks, too many pencil-ish marks. I could hear an art professor saying, "A painting is not a drawing. You should not be drawing on your painting." That's what a traditional oil professor should be saying to students. So the fact that I'm using pencils is unconventional, okay? And at the end of the pencil phase, I said, now, lo and behold, I have too many pencil lines in my painting. Do you remember that? But look, I'm already just getting started in the very next layer, and what's happening? I'm already beginning to diminish the pencil marks in my painting because I'm going over some of them, reduplicating them, if you will, with paint. Therefore, the effect is they get pushed back. They're no longer visible if they. Part of the reason that we paint either from life or from a photo of life, right? Part of the reason we paint en plein air, actually standing on the street corner looking at stuff, or from a photo. Why don't we just paint out of our head? Which of course we can and we do. But generally speaking, why not paint out of our head? The answer is because the reality of, in this case, the reality of the photograph will suggest things. I'll see things in the photograph that I wouldn't have thought of on my own. Does that make sense? It's like, oh, look at that. There's a little ridge in this building or something, I just saw something a minute ago and now I forgot what it was. Oh, I know, it was the little angle support on the street light, that little, and I like it. I don't have to do it. I'm not obligated to put it there simply because it's there in reality in the photograph. Doesn't mean I need to put it there, but I ask myself, oh, is that a nice touch, so to speak? Is that a nice detail? And indeed, I thought it was. So you don't, and again, I think I've seen early journey painters leave elements out of their paintings because it's too much bother or because it's too hard to draw. And okay, if it really is too hard to draw, then bless your heart, that's okay. But your objective should be, no, to include or exclude elements in your painting based on aesthetic considerations, not based on, oh, that's too hard to draw, or I just don't have the time, or I've run out of patience. Believe me, I can identify with all of those impulses. But those are not generally, not good, if I may pontificate slightly. Those are not good aesthetic reasons. Those are lazy reasons. I can be as lazy as the next guy. It's like, oh, no, I'm just tired. I just quit right there. I understand that impulse. I really do. I just try not to yield to it too much. All right, now I'm going to play around and do something here that I'm not sure about. This goes along with the experimentation early in this painting in the acrylic stage where I used tape. I actually used tape to mask off parts of the painting so that I couldn't do anything. And at one point, this whole building was masked off because, did we just lose our sound? We did. Let's see if I can figure out why we lost our sound. Oh, just got it back. All right. We there? Yeah, okay. I'm with a rag, I'm going to play around with, now that I've rather carefully, as you saw, now that I've rather carefully drawn all these details on this side of the building, I'm going to experiment with removing some of them. Why? Because less is more. No! Because most of the time more is more. But because in fact, I did want to have a larger area of rest, one could call it. Less is more sometimes. It's only more when it actually is advantageous. Generally speaking, please understand that more means more. And generally speaking, our eyes would rather see more, not less. But more what? Now that's the question. More what? More detail? Oh my goodness. No. More realism? Well, maybe, sometimes. More accuracy? Yeah, a lot of times. But anyway, no, there's no way to answer that question. It's with any finality or confidence or whatever. Each painting is different. Each painter is different, isn't it? So you have to decide for yourself when that ironic statement is true, and then don't employ it blindly when it's not true, because many times most of the time more is more. Anyway, all right, I've ranted on that long enough. Too much, too long. I can't really tell what's on the top of this building, so it doesn't really matter. It's just, industrial stuff. Air conditioners, heaters, ventilators, I don't know, escape hatches, I don't know what, helicopters. I am using quite a bit of liquid on my brushes here because I do want this dark stuff, pretty much all of it, to be quite transparent. Not happy with that color though, so mix it with something else. I'll make more sense of that dental, that stuff right there, in the final edit. I don't want to get too specific right now because in the last year or so, I think I've made it generally a standard practice that whenever I put paint down on the canvas with a brush, that I'm going to assume more often than not I'm going to mess up the paint after I put it down. I clearly don't do that every time, but more often than not, it's the exception if I don't. And I found that impulse has really been a good one for me in the art of creating. I am not happy with that right there, but it'll be okay once I do the final edit. It's muddy and fuzzy, but I can't fix it with dark stuff on my brushes, so I'm just going to ignore it for now. It'll be okay. Now, these windows. Actually a balcony on this building, a faux balcony. It was like wrought iron, French, Parisian fake balconies right here. But nice little detail on the architecture. All right, moving along. Let me sit down again and focus in, and I'll zoom you guys in. I hope I remember to move you when it's time to move. I find usually if I bring my camera stand so that it's in my way, then I tend to remember to move it when I'm done painting in this area. Okay, back to the cars. So these cars, this row, of course, they're coming, these two rows, they're coming toward us, those two rows of traffic and 2 rows of parking, in case you're wondering what you're looking at here. I mentioned earlier that when I went downtown, this picture was taken last week sometime. I was going to say a week ago, but it was more than that. Anyway, it was during the coronavirus lockdown, so the street it had parked cars, but it had virtually no driving cars. So one of the nice things about taking pictures down there was that I could and did much of the time. I stood right in the middle of the street. It was so quiet, I could hear, if a car came up behind me, I could hear it. That's how crazy. So all this, all the traffic that's in my photograph here, I added in Photoshop yesterday morning. I emailed this image. Well, I emailed several images to my client. This is a commission piece. I emailed several photographs to my client, said, which one do you like? He picked this view, and then I edited it in Photoshop, mostly doing things with color and light. So in a sense, my rough sketch, in this case, my rough sketch was done in Photoshop. And then I emailed that to him as well. In any case, I think it's kind of funny that all the traffic in the photograph I photoshopped in. And then, of course, it's even funnier when you understand that I'm not copying every single car. Like I'm copying the front car, this one and this one. Beyond that, all the other vehicles are more or less, I'm just sort of vaguely imitating what's in the photograph, but not much. Because it's just a unending row of cars. Same thing with the pedestrians. The kid on the bike here, or the man on the bike, I should say, was, I did Photoshop him in. And actually drawn enough people on bikes that I really don't need the reference for him either. So I certainly want to give the impression of realistic vehicles. I don't want them to look like, what kind of car is that? No, I don't want them. I don't want people trying to guess what year, make, and model. Although in my close-up cars, people can certainly can do that, and in fact do that all the time. and usually, I try to make the year, make, and model pretty boring, pretty not exciting. You know, it's usually not a Corvette Stingray. It's usually a Honda or a Ford or Chevy, Honda or Toyota, some Nissan, something pretty predictable, ordinary, and boring, easily ignorable, because I don't usually want my paintings to be about the cars, right? The cars are there, they're part of the furniture of our world, but it's not a painting about cars. I need a palette knife. Maybe this one will do. Sure. Again, I don't, bigger, better. You know what? I have a thing upstairs, but I don't want to run upstairs and get it. So let's do the old credit card trick. There, gift card. Wow, I don't think that card's any good anymore. The numbers are worn off it. So I know there's a reason I've been carrying this card around all these months. Right. Again, city streets, a veritable forest of vertical strokes, vertical marks. I don't even need to identify each one. I just look at the photograph and try to replicate merely the density of that forest. That's all I need to try to emulate. That's a good big word, don't you think? Emulate. All right, I need to move you guys over. Oops, not that much. Let's work on this side of the street. Hello, Marcus. Comma pigments. That's good to know. An oil stick about liquid. Hello, Jeremy. Jeremy has a question. Uh-oh, Jeremy says the bike might be large. This car might be small. Let me mess with that a little bit. Although, do you know, thank you for the input. Now let me pull this down and look at it. Oh yeah. No, that car's too large now. If a human being stands next to a sports car, which this is actually, it is a BMW, you understand that the top of a sports car comes up to about your sternum if you're an average height man. So that would mean a man standing here would be about this tall. And that's just about right, I think. I'll look at that again. And I can make all kinds of mistakes. Again, so a person standing by this car would be about this tall. No, nothing to compare him to. Oops. hang on a second. I would like a T-square right now, but I don't have one. So I'm going to use this old paint palette because I want to make sure that this street light is actually vertical. That would be, I think, an unfortunate mistake. All right, that's close enough, I think. Yeah. A little block of something down there on at the side of the road that I kind of like, so I'm going to include it. Am I off camera yet? No, but I'm getting close, aren't I? All right, let's widen you guys out. And time to stand up again. So, let's leave it there for a bit. Let's do this. This Grecian, whatever you call it, classical architecture back here, which is the auditorium here in our fair city. Yeah, just a hint. I've actually made the building just a tiny bit bigger and maybe slightly more complex than it literally is. But I'm liking the feel of it, so I believe I'm going to leave it just the way I've got it. I sort of added another layer, if you will, to the roof, but I think it works well. I misplaced my little scratchy knife, right? Scratchy brush handle, I mean. These brushes, these chip brushes, I like both ends. The handles are great for scratching stuff, for scratching with. Scratching the painting I'm talking about now. Some of you guys, you went somewhere inappropriate. Scratch my back. Yeah. Let me zoom in just for a second. Let me just bring you guys. So again, I have, 8 more layers to go on this painting, but that looks like, there's the photograph, right, with receding traffic. I have a lot more traffic in mine in the painting than there in the photograph. That's fine, but does it not look like, these are planters, by the way, these are not cars. This is part of, after 9/11, this is part of our anti-bomb stuff disguised as, this used to be parking places when they first built this street, and shortly after the street was open, it was 9/11, and so they had to change all their blueprints to include anti-terrorist, anti-bomb devices. Again, multi-ton planters, just disguised as planters. A little bit unfortunate because I don't think they're aesthetically pleasing they're not terribly, they're right on the street. You know, they're taking up parking places. Great big planters. Why are those there? Well, now you know. All right, forgive me, I know I've gone off screen there. Hang on, I'm going to move you guys again. There we go. You're both cameras pointing the same direction now. That's what I want. So welcome again. In case you missed some of my earlier blathering about it, I'm quite happy to discover that this streaming is considerably more dependable here downstairs in my downstairs studio than it was in my upstairs studio. That's a happy discovery, right? You Facebook people, your stream is okay. We've been having fits with it in my upstairs studio. Some of you are wondering, why do you have an upstairs and a downstairs studio? And that is a very good question. Like everything else, it has a long history to it. Since I've gotten this far in, I'll go ahead and tell you the history. So for most of my adult life, besides doing other things, I was a freelance illustrator. And very often I was an illustrator and something, or something else and illustrator. But anyway, it feels to me like for 30 years essentially I was a full-time artist. And as an illustrator, I worked in a number of different mediums. Airbrush being one of the foremost, pen and ink, watercolor, gouache, and so forth. Everything but oil. And then 15 years ago, lo and behold, I turned into an oil painter. And so my tools were quite different. Tools of oil painting are quite different. So whereas I had an illustrator's studio for many years, when my wife went out shopping for the house we're in right now, which is right before the crash of 2008, we moved here in 2007. You know, that old buy high, sell low. Yeah, that's us. That's what we did. So we haven't sold yet. So hopefully it'll come out all right. We're finally in the not underwater on our house, finally. Anyway, when she went, by the time we moved in here, I was a full-time oil painter, right? So she came looking for, one of her criteria was a house where I could have a studio on the main floor. Bless her heart, isn't that sweet? So that's what she came shopping for, and that's what she found. So I'm actually in what would normally be the living room or the front room in this house. And that's part of the reason why my studio is decorated a little bit more than most art studios would be. And I mean that decorated, like, you know, it's got antique oak furniture, right? And there's my tabaret, which is completely covered up, but that's an antique oak apothecary file, right? And while I'm back here is a nice antique, what a mess, gate leg table, nice antique finds, you know, so it's like partly living room and partly studio. But it's certainly used 99% of the time as my studio. Anyway, so I have this downstairs painting studio, and then upstairs I had then a less used illustration studio, right? But then 2.5 years ago, as you may know, our grandchildren, 4 of them, and their parents moved in. It's a temporary situation, but it's been going 2.5 years. And frankly, we love it. But the date will come when they'll move out. We'll be sad and happy very much, both. But then when they moved in, I needed a place to paint, oil paint, away from all their noise, right? So then I bought another easel. So if you've watched me paint in the last couple of years in a different place, that's where I've been. I've been upstairs. But the upstairs easel is quite decidedly too small for this painting this size. All right, so there's the whole story. I know that was fascinating. Why is he telling us all this? Is this inappropriate? I hope not. Hey, you know what? I'm almost done with this laborious phase, this long stage of dark details in oil. Almost finished. Yahoo, that's exciting. I'm always excited about coming to the end of every phase is kind of exciting. Okay, so now I don't really have too much pencil in my painting, but I do have too much line. It's quite decidedly too liney, because the last two stages or phases, both the pencil and the brush have been liney, right? So again, I can hear an art professor said, "Don't paint, don't draw. Drawing's not a painting," which is exactly what he or she should be saying. Not necessarily with that tone of voice, but that is correct. But this is unconventional. I've grown more and more unconventional over the years. Not by any design, that's just the way it's happened. All right, I'm going to call that done. Whew. Is there anywhere else where I want to wipe off? Yeah, I do. I want to wipe off some of the stuff that I just put on. Why? Because I want interesting marks. Quite simple. Birthday email. Oh, yes, I will. Nancy? Yeah. Wright is asking you to call him. Today's his mom's birthday, and we want to deliver the painting to him.
Oh, today?
Today. But I have to varnish it yet.
Okay, that's good.
Is that likely?
Call him?
Yeah, would you? Thank you, Wright. I have the painting right here. Here it is. So here, by the way, here's Wright's parents. Oh man, I got a light spot on that. I'll have to touch that up. Thankfully, fortunately, I have oil paints right here at my right hand, so that shouldn't be too hard to touch up. I'm guessing, right, that we want this delivered to you today, right? You know what? I'm going to have to touch this up after I do the varnish, so I'll varnish it first. For those of you who wonder, Gamvar is the brand varnish that I'm going to use. You want to see me? You want to see me varnish painting? Okay, yes, you do. Okay. Hang on, we're going to change gears. This is worth watching. But forgive me, I need a rag. Okay, I'm going to keep talking. I have to run upstairs to one of my rag bags and get a terry cloth rag. That's one of the, bumpy kinds of fabric, right? There we go, perfect, got it. All right, on my way back down. Yeah, I was telling Wright just yesterday that I stumbled upon this trick for varnishing paintings. Stumbled on it quite by accident just last week. Am I in the picture? I am. All right. So here's how we're going to do this. Very simple. Just going to pour some of this varnish on the painting and very gently. Now, back in the day, they said for years, you can't varnish a painting for 6 months. Right? That's standard wisdom. But the Gamblin company, manufacturers of Gamvar, have said, no, you can, with this varnish. So it's really, it's like a hybrid between ordinary traditional picture varnish and retouch varnish. So you don't have to wait for the painting to cure. Isn't that great? Now here's the accidental trick I discovered last week. So I love gloss varnish on a painting, by the way. It just pops all the colors. Here's the trick I learned last week, though. After you varnish it, you take a rag and very gently give it sort of a rubbed finish instead of a sloppy, slurpy, wet finish. This just gives it again, a hand-rubbed finish, perfect amount of glossiness versus whatever. All right, so that's a trick I just learned last week. I learned it by accident because I had just varnished one of my paintings last week. I was out in the garage and something happened, and the garage, the painting fell down and did a face plant on the floor of the garage with sawdust and all kinds of stuff. I was horrified. So I picked it up and wiped it off, just like you saw me do, and went, golly. Just like that, and went, golly. It looked perfect. So if I hold like that, you can see the glossiness of it, right? But the final product, it's bad lighting, but the colors just pop. So, frankly, I'm quite proud of that painting. Thank you, my friend. So my wife, Nancy, is calling right as we speak on linen, by the way. It's kind of nice, extra fancy. And this will be tacky till tomorrow morning, but it's not dripping wet. You know, it's not like going to harm anything else. It's just slightly tacky. All right, so put this over here where it will not do a face plant in the garage. There, who'd have thunk it? Right, I touched up your painting today, as I think you understand, so I can't varnish it until tomorrow. It does need to be dry, and it may be the day after tomorrow, in fact. So we will be in touch about getting that painting delivered to you. Probably Monday now, right? Thanks for speaking up, right? I hope we'll get you taken care of. Sorry about the white hairs I just gave you. All right. I like this painting so far. I hope you do. It's a little bit dark, but that's the way all my paintings are right before the final edit layer. So final edit, quote unquote, is coming up next. And a final edit is opaque paint. So lots of white mixed in with the colors, right? So it's opaque. Tending toward hard edges. Like in my opinion, my painting right now is more soft than hard, although you could argue either way. But this is the final edit layer. That's the best description. And in this layer right here is where I decide what to discard by covering it up with something opaque, what to hide and what to keep. And it's not primarily a realism choice. I want some parts to be very realistic, but intermixed with all of it is all kinds, as you can see, there's all kinds of abstract stuff happening all over this painting, right? And the messier it is, so to speak, the messier it is, the more fun the final edit layer is. So that's part of the reason why I spend so much time making so much mess in the early stages, because the more mess it's there now, the more fun, if you will, the more fun the final edit will be. All right, let me take just a moment. I'm not going to broadcast the whole final edit process. First of all, this is by far the slowest phase, the slowest layer of all 20 layers, of all 20 phases, if you will. This is the slowest. This is the most time consuming. During this phase is when I paint slowly and thoughtfully and carefully. Now that doesn't mean in extreme detail, because slow and careful is not the same as detail. Because a big part of my concern is, again, how much of the abstraction to retain. So it's not just focus in on realism. No, it's realism plus abstraction. I'll do a little bit here so you can see me get started. And then I'll probably stop broadcasting here in a little while. I mean, as you know, it's already ridiculous. I break every rule. That's why I don't have very many viewers. On YouTube, the ideal length is 10 minutes, right? Oh, I thought they meant 10 hours. All right, now here's a good question. Where to start? 3 choices. Start with the lightest, brightest, whitest object, which in this case is going to be the corner of this building or the edge of that building, or the sky back here. Okay, that's option number 1. Option number 2 is start with the focal point. Well, now, what is the focal point? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it could be the corner here, but in a composition like this, I mean, everything is pointing. So in a sense, the focal point's back there. And third option is start with the sky. I'm standing here looking and thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to start with the sky. That's the rarest, the least common of the 3 choices for me, is to start with the sky. But I'm going to, and this sky will probably be done in stages or phases. It won't be done all at once. There's too much of it. Am I on? Yeah, I am. Let me move you a little higher so maybe you'll get a tiny bit less glare. There's one of my completely abstract red marks up there in the sky. And I'm doing what I do often, which is just, there's no real explanation for it other than just I like it. It's just a real typical Dan Nelson mark. It tickles something in my innards. Now, if I decide here in a few minutes, if I decide that red abstract mark, there's too much of it, then of course I'll do what I already did one time. I'll just paint through it. But once I've painted through it, I've lost it. So I'm doing the same thing down here, by the way, with these gray. They were probably at one time, they were probably black pencil marks. I'm painting around them. Again, pretty hard to explain or describe. I don't know. I just think that is so much a Dan Nelsonism. If I were you, I wouldn't even necessarily try to emulate that necessarily. It's just that is a weirdism. That's more than a Dan Nelsonism. That's a downright weirdism. It's a trick, if you will, a practice I employ quite a lot in my abstract painting as well. So, and it is a purely abstract element or consideration. Again, it has nothing to do, as you can see, it has nothing to do with realism. All right, so this sky is going to be a mostly blue sky with a yellow-orange underpainting, okay? Now, I've known this from the get-go, and I've mentioned it a couple times, but most of you watching have been sort of absorbing the orangeness of the sky for a long time, and you've kind of gotten used to it being, you know, either a sunset, it's actually a sunrise, but you've gotten used to it being a, you know, very warm, sunsetty, sunrisey paint scene, and it's never been that in my mind. So this, what I'm doing right now, maybe is a little shocking to you guys because, as I said, you got used to the orange. It's not so shocking to me because I've seen it coming the whole time. Adding some titanium white and some Naples yellow to this paint, and a little bit liquid, just enough liquid so that the paint flows the way I want it to. Now, right at the moment, I'm retaining these edges of these buildings quite sharply, right? And I'm likely to come back and smudge those out either with a finger or a rag or a brush or who knows what. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'd rather paint it precise first and add the mess later. At least that's the mood I'm in right now. I'm not sure I always do it that way, but that's what I'm inclined to do right now. But having said that, let me also say this. I do find it interesting that most cityscape painters, if you just Google cityscape, like cityscape oil painting perhaps, you will find that I think the majority, probably the great majority of them, in their paintings, the tops of tall buildings are fuzzy and the sharpness is down here in the traffic or street level. And I have noticed that for years. I've seen that for years, and I respect many of the, some like Jeremy Mann, that describes his paintings. G. Harvey, that describes his paintings. Both people that I respect very highly. But for some, I just don't see cities that way. To me, when I see a city, the outline of the tall buildings is sharp and crisp. Unless it's a misty, foggy day, which is, I've done those too. Anyway, and for me, the fog is down here. The soft edges are down here. So much of this will be very soft, partly because of the trees, and partly just because sort of that's the way I see a city. Everything that down here is moving and vibrating and shifting, so it's soft edged, and the buildings are hard. So I find myself strangely the odd man out in that regard, and I will change my mind when I feel like it. When I get convinced that those guys were right all along, which, as you know, is very possible. I mean, you know, could start today. Not likely, though. I'm already, 85% through this painting, so it's not likely that I'm going to make that change today. But having said that, I probably will do stuff like that. Again, don't you paint with your fingers. It's okay for me. It is partly okay for me because I don't have any cobalt blue, don't have any cadmium, red, yellow, orange. Got some family sounds going on. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Mr. Youngest is not very happy.
He hurt himself.
Oh, he hurt himself again? He's, oh, bless his heart. My daughter has the patience of Job, as the expression goes. We love our kids, but boy, they take the patience of Job. Do you know that expression? Old expression, I think. So you see me doing atmospheric perspective right now, and I will use, just as you saw me doing right then, I will use likely several different techniques to integrate the building. Like I did a thumb there, I did a pinky here, I just used a fan brush. It's very intuitive, very varied. I'll use many different techniques to make sure that I don't have, even though in my mind, I like the hard stuff up here and soft. Still, I don't want it this hard. Does that make sense? And I have too many abstract marks up here, so. All right, I'm not sick of the sky yet, so let's go down. Little bits of the orange, see, peeking through everywhere. Everywhere. In fact, really, all the blue that I put on, there's only a few little spots that I would call truly opaque, and even that, barely opaque. Most of the blue paint that I just put on the canvas, strictly speaking, is translucent. There's a big difference between translucent and opaque. Okay, so I'm using opaque paint, quote unquote, but I'm applying it thinly enough that it's actually well, I'm still broadcasting, aren't I? Hello, Aiden Burns. Wow, no kidding. All the gambling stuff got removed from Canada. No. So I'm painting with my left hand because I think my brain feels different when I'm painting with. I'm more intuitive. I feel like I'm more intuitive. I can't prove that I am. I will say I'm self-conscious, self-aware enough to say I hope that some of you early journey painters are just paying attention to literally the way I'm painting right. In fact, it'd be better, honestly, if you could see my whole body. Here, just for fun, I don't usually do this. But Whoops, I got a phone that's about to die, so I need to plug it in. This might cause noise, so I'm sorry if it does. Can't be helped though. It's either noise or we stop broadcasting. One of the, because okay, I don't know if I'm going to do it anymore, but I thought it might be interesting. I was doing yeah, okay, I still am. If you guys, even if you guys weren't watching, I'd be painting more or less in this manner. You can't do this sitting down. I mean, I know the day may come when I won't be able to stand up, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Until then, I'm going to paint with my whole body. And again, even if you guys weren't watching, I would be painting like this with my whole body. One of my favorite expressions is, well, I've got a bunch of related. The essence of good painting. Not the essence of a good painting, no, the essence of the verb. The essence of doing good painting is making interesting marks. Okay? Check so far? Just believe that I believe it. You don't have to believe it. But anyway, just understand that's what I believe. The essence, the sine qua non, without which nothing. If you ain't got this, you ain't got nothing. The essence of good painting is interesting, or making interesting marks. Interesting marks are the direct product or byproduct of interesting movements. So that's why I've done this taken this unusual, I don't know if I've ever done this, except maybe when I'm doing broadcasting on the street. You can see me more. The essence of good painting is making interesting marks. Interesting marks are the byproduct of interesting movements. Any stroke of paint, any stroke, any mark applied with enthusiasm, vigor, energy, boldness, confidence, joy, joie de vivre, is a good mark. Good marks come from good movements. Now, that does not, by the way, that does not mean you have to be, so to speak, in the mood to paint. Doesn't mean you have to be in a good mood to paint. But when you do paint, your body has to move as if you were in a good mood. Okay, you could fake it. I think of Van Gogh. You know, was he in a good mood? I don't know. It didn't look like it a lot of time. But his paintings were outrageous. Celebration of joy and beauty in life, in spite of how he may have been feeling himself personally at the moment. There's a lesson in there somewhere. So many of those marks that I made up there were quite spontaneous, quite unplanned, would be a word. Unpremeditated, that's a better word. That's a better word. They weren't contrived. I didn't think, where should I put my feet? Where should I put my hips and my shoulders? What kind of stance should I assume in order to make, no. It's all very spontaneous, but very, very free. And most of the marks, I'm quite happy with them, and they are quite free, spontaneous, and so forth. I'm not done. Now, as you can see, I've been avoiding painting over this yellow, and that's going to continue. I am not going to cover up this yellow burst here. Again, I'm painting a lot with my left hand because I do that a lot, especially anytime I'm uncertain about my painting. I don't mean uncertain is not the right word. I'm just really wanting to tap into my intuitive side. I will rely on my left hand. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now. I don't want to overthink it. I'm getting a little bit too overthinky. I'm going to mix up again some of this yellower, so I'm adding some Naples yellow and titanium white to the blue that's already on my brushes. So it's actually a very pale green color right now because I want a little bit more work way down here. A lot more energy than it didn't make much of a difference. There's a little bit of boldness in that mark that ended up not showing up that well. That's kind of nice. That's kind of nice. All right, I'm going to leave the sky. Every time I say that, it sounds like I'm going to leave this guy. I'm going to leave this guy. Now, I'm married to a wonderful woman. I'm going to leave the sky. The things my brain does, eh? Crazy things my mind does. What guy? What guy are you going to leave? I'm going to leave this guy right here. And yeah, let's leave blue completely. I'll save those brushes. I'll probably be using them again in a little while, but let's change gears quite a bit. Oh, wait a minute. I've got a palette covered with blue paint, so bear with me just a minute here. All right, since we're doing all kinds of craziness anyway, crazy views, might as well let you watch me clean off my palette. It's pretty exciting. So there's my palette. Not very exciting. I'm being, hello, Sue Wrights Taylor. Okay, indeed we will, right? But as I said, I just touched you up this morning, or this afternoon actually. I explained that. I ended up touching up a lot more than I expected to. Anyway, so that has to dry at least a day. So I won't be varnishing your painting at least till Sunday. And I don't know that I'll be doing any work on Sunday, maybe. So the earliest we could do would be Monday anyway. I will touch base for sure. And I look forward to seeing you. I look forward to getting the other painting to you. Wright is one of my painting buddies here in Raleigh. We met in one of my classes I was teaching. Yeah, goodness, how many years ago? 7 years ago? I don't know. Time flies. Maybe not. Maybe 6. Been a while though. He showed up in one of my classes, and we've been buddies ever since. And he hired me to do a portrait of himself and a portrait of his parents. What you just saw his parents, and here's young Wright when he was a senior in high school, sitting on the hood of his Jeep. All right, let's get back to painting and not such crazy stuff. You don't have to watch my whole body, I promise. I'm sure that was exciting. So I've cleaned off my palette now with a razor. Let's do some warm colors. Generally speaking, I want two different brushes in each hand, a different brush in each hand. I'm going to do some mid-tone stuff now, some medium here in the middle, orange, brown. Here's the photograph that I'm painting from. It's our main street, downtown Raleigh, Fayetteville Street, it's called. And the photograph is quite heavily edited in Photoshop. That turns out to be a not infrequent strategy for me in this season. That is that my rough sketch for a painting will in fact be Photoshop. So I don't do a no tan, I don't do a color study. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a great way to do it. I would feel a lot more artsy. I would feel more artsy, which of course is a major goal of mine, to feel artsy. I hope. I'd feel a lot more artsy if I, in fact, did a sketch. But anyway, Photoshop will do. Anyway, and so that it is certainly, the photograph is certainly helping me, talking to me a lot about colors and so forth. My goal in the underpainting, generally speaking, is to be close to the correct color. I want my drawing, before I get to the final edit, which is where I am right now, before I get to the final edit, bear with me there. Before I get to the final edit, I want my drawing close, my values close, and my colors close. That's one of the ways I know when it's time to leave the acrylics and leave the underlaying, especially leave acrylics, and move on to the oils. So if I've done a good job in all the underpainting layers, then my job in the final edit layer is greatly aided, made easier, lessened, and so forth, because there's a lot that I don't have to do. There's a lot I don't have to think about which I would have to think about if I came to this point and my underpainting was inadequate, shall we say. But that's pretty much not the case, I feel like. In this particular painting, my underpainting work has been pretty satisfactory. Okay, let's do something else. Well, I could keep working on this building for a moment. Pick up some different brushes. I actually have a synthetic soft brush here, and then a small filbert. There's white trim, if I can use that word, white details in these windows that are quite important to the look of this building. And this building, in my opinion, this big orange square right there is one of the more important buildings in this scene. And again, I've painted this scene many, many times, and I think I feel that way every time I do it. I feel like, nah, because of its, there's bigger buildings, and there's up close. This is very important too, but it's off to the side. Like the closer we get to the center of the painting, the more important the building becomes, and the more of the and so this is the one that there's more of that showing than any other building toward the center of the painting. So it's, anyway, so I find it quite critical. So I'm going to spend more time and attention and detail on this building than just about any other. Maybe more than any other, I don't know. All right, and there's white trim, white vertical lines and a horizontal in each of these windows. All right, so that brings up one of my favorite subjects to rant on about. I need a t-shirt, don't I? I need a t-shirt that says on the back, rant on the back, so you guys see it. My regular viewers tease me not infrequently about my various rants. Okay, here is one. So I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm counting, yeah, in the photograph, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 windows in the photo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, yeah. Not in the same, anyway, close enough. So that means every one of these windows has 2 vertical bars and 1 horizontal. So if you will, 11 times 3, that'd be 33 of these white marks, all right? And I have a category for that. I call that a repeated or a highly repeated or an oft repeated motif. That is to say, that's a shape, an element that appears in this painting several times. In fact, I don't usually do the math, but there you go, 33 times. Are you with me? So that's a lot of repetition. All right, and here's the rule. Every rule can be broken, but you better know the rules first, and then you know when to break them. Otherwise, you're probably just screwing up. Again. Dan Nelson, quote number 423, or thereabouts. Back to the issue of oft repeated. So here is the rule then. That when you are doing, and this happens a lot in architecture, but it can happen in nature too. Like a dead tree with a whole, you can imagine a dead pine tree with hundreds of little branches coming down the side. That also would be an oft repeated motif, I call it. Maybe that's coming from my music background, I don't know. But here's the rule. Whenever you have an object that appears many times, you must come up with many different strategies, techniques, tools for rendering that oft repeated. All right, so far you've seen me use 4 techniques. They are a filbert brush, small filbert brush that I'm drawing by dragging it across the canvas or down, making a skinny line, okay? Then I've got a synthetic. Now I'm making this up. I don't always do it this way, but in this case I've got a flat synthetic which makes lovely skinny lines. And then I've got this little tiny palette knife. So there's 3 different techniques, and you're wondering where the 4th one is that I've already used a couple times. And then I'm using a scratch. Scratching through. So there's 4 different techniques for rendering this thing. And guess what? I'm not done yet. Let's do one more. Now I'm looking for Nice small brush. I am in need of some new small filberts. I've taken them all upstairs in the last couple weeks. All right, so here's another method. This will give me what? I was at 4, right? This will be method number 5. So, and this one is put down a rather fat, smudgy mark, and then reverse paint it with a small brush with dark paint, painting up to the lines. Does that make sense? So that's technique number 5. So a similar, now why does this matter? Well, because, let me go back to basic principles again. The essence of good painting is making interesting marks. The essence of interestingness is variety. So here I've got, in the middle of the painting, all of a sudden, I've got 33 marks. To render them in a similar manner would be boring, right? Now we can also introduce things like slightly different color. So it's not a different technique, but it's different because it's a different color. So here I've got a more yellow-orange. Even, by the way, doing with 2 different hands actually introduces a slightly different look, different feel. So if I add that, that would be 6 different methods, and you get the idea, right? And just because I've like finished this window up here doesn't mean I can't come up and say, wait a minute, I want to reinforce that mark, and then I want to mess it up. That right there, if you were paying attention, if you're an artist, that right there might have been, that's worth all the boredom you've been going through all day watching me. Right there, as they say, that was worth the price of admission, that little how to paint a highly repetitive motif or highly repeated shape or object in your painting. Now, of course, none of this applies to those of you who are doing super realism or hyperrealism or photorealism. No. This is only in the world of what I snobbishly call, I'm being a snob for just a moment, what I snobbishly call real painting. And you see, of course, you've seen, I've done quite a bit of that kind of thing. Now, please understand, again, let me repeat, this face of this building, I think, next to, okay, I'll say this face of this building is number 1. Most important building in the whole painting is right there. That's number 2. I am certainly not going to spend this kind of time and attention on most of the buildings in this painting, right? Does that make sense to you? I hope it does. It was important on this particular building because of its size, position, color, so on and so on and so on and so forth. So please understand, I'm not going to paint this whole painting with that kind of detail. Not at all. That would be, that would be a disaster. I'm being a little dramatic. I'm an artist. I'm being dramatic. Thank you for not. Thank you. All right, and I'm quite in the mood for doing something quite different now. So, by the way, which is a good, whoops. We have lost our Facebook friends. Let's see if we can get them back. Okay, so one of my phones disappeared because the battery went down to 0. So our Facebook friends have already left us. I will take this moment then to say goodbye, bid a fond adieu to you, my YouTube friends. Good for me to paint by myself sometime anyway. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for leaving your chats. And I'll look forward to reading them all again later. Hello, Ms. Heideland. Ms. Heideland. Very, very cool. Where are you from? Switzerland. Woohoo! That's fun. I wish I was in Switzerland. There's lots prettier stuff to paint there, in my humble opinion. My job is to make this city look like Switzerland, like Bern. All right, bye. Thanks for watching, y'all. Bye-bye.